Okay, Sarah, good morning. It's nice to see you.
Good morning, James. How are you?
I'm I'm good, thank you. We've already qualified that it's definitely not a live bear that is behind you. It's very much just a
Yeah.
picture.
Yeah, believe it
So
or
no,
not.
nobody needs to be afraid. So that's a good start. So it's really good to get some time with you, and we're really looking forward to having a chat with you about the world of scale ups and the world of growing technology businesses. And you sit in a really cool part of the market, very much an emerging market, Earth observation and space technology with Kuva. And again, we've already had that chat about, I'm not very good at pronouncing that because it's a Scandinavian name. But we're really interested today to talk about your perspective, which is from a HR and a people's perspective. So what life is like and how your role manifests and the challenges and the um, day-to-day tasks that you have to do in the job that you're doing. But I think the place to start with you is your background's really fascinating because you come from like a sports background and then you've got into technology that way. So tell us a bit about how you've ended up here.
Yeah, so overall, my background is a lot in sports. I've been coaching track and field for youth for a long time. And after that, I started doing some fitness instruction classes for adults and seniors. And meanwhile, I was studying then international business and logistics with a major in management. And through that, I had some internship opportunities, out of which one was in a university in Tampere. And there also, I was working with our current CEO. So at the same time, he jumped into this company
Right.
and basically told me a bit of background on what exactly the company is doing. He knew I'm a crazy nature person, love animals, love everything to do with preserving and protecting nature. So when he said he's working now as CEO in a space startup, which of course, space, very fascinating. I don't know much about it, but was very, very fascinated. And the idea or the mission is to improve life on Earth. So having applications for carbon and environment, food security, and then, of course, safety and security. Just based on this, I was sold, told him, whenever you have any job opening, please take me in. And then I was in within the first 10 employees of Kuva.
Wow.
I
Wow.
was the first woman also in the team.
Right. Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. And it was fascinating. So a bit on Kuva's background, it started with basically a small team of 5 engineers, satellite engineers, and they were working on kind of projects for European Space Agency. And during this time, of course, everyone had similar backgrounds, quite a bit the similar language. So it was a very homogeneous way of working. But then they started changing the aspect of going more into kind of creating our own constellation of hyperspectral satellites. So our goal is to build a 100 satellite constellation
Wow.
of hyperspectral satellites by 2030. So yeah, now we just actually had our first official launch of the constellation in August,
Yeah, I
which
saw
was
that.
very,
That
very
looked
exciting.
cool. So what does that actually mean, just for people that perhaps don't understand what it is you guys do? You've launched like a load of satellites basically into orbit, have you?
Yeah, yeah. So basically, we have a very unique camera technology. So as I mentioned, hyperspectral imaging. So the simple way of explaining it is what we can see with our eyes on the electromagnetic spectrum is 3 bands: red, green, and blue. So these are the colors we see. Hyperspectral goes beyond that and sees much more bands in that area. So we can see much more than our actual eyes see, and through that, other satellites see. So with this technology, we have a very, very various opportunities of different kinds of applications which we can do with this. But as our mission is to improve life on Earth, we've decided to focus on carbon and environment, food security, and safety and security.
Brilliant. Okay, so I'm like you. I'm very well connected to doing what's right for the planet and sustainability and all those things. So I can totally understand why you bought into that vision and that purpose for the business. What was it like? Um, so from a broad level, you sort of like, oh yeah, I'm really interested in that. That feels really, really good. What was it like when you sort of turned up at the start? There's like you said, there's 5 engineers, 10 people. You were the first female employee. What was the like mission that you were given there? And you talk, I had to write it down, hyperspectral imaging. You talk about it now like it's the most normal thing ever, but for lots of people, they've probably never heard of it. So, what was that like going into that role on that first day?
Of course, I felt purely dumb. In my own mind, I was like, well, I don't know much about space. I don't know much about this technology. Hyperspectral imaging was, as you said, very unknown to me, and it took quite a while to kind of understand it. Also, we didn't, of course, have in place a lot of onboarding preparations, recruitment preparations. There was a lot of stuff kind of wishy-washy. So at the end of the day, I actually got to start from scratch. So I was doing, in addition to HR, I was doing marketing, some business development, and office coordination. And with all of this, it was a blank slate, which I got to start from, which was, of course, both very, very intimidating, but also insanely thrilling. So the fact that I got to actually learn, do, and I had basically the world was my oyster in this. And at the same time, I was learning so much about not only my own expertise, but also about space technology, about satellites, about hyperspectral imaging, about what it can do for the nature and all of this. It was very, very interesting. Yeah.
So how did you know that these measures you were putting in place were right? Because lots of people tell me things like that, and they'll be like, "Look, I did so many things that wasn't that I did it wrong. It's just I had to fail quite quickly. I had to realize quite quickly that I was going down the wrong path."
Yeah, yeah. Failing fast is one of our mentalities.
Right.
So, a lot of failing happened, of course, and there were a lot of things that I tried and it failed, and then I had to change course and all of this. But I think that's one of the beautiful sides of being in a startup environment is just that's okay, and that's basically what you're supposed to do. So the issue would be if you're never failing, you're probably doing something wrong in my
Yeah,
mind.
exactly,
Yeah.
and yeah, because you're never gonna get it right. And how in those early days were you working like with the team in person? Were you remote? How were you actually getting to grips with the day to day in the business? How were you actually learning?
Yeah, at the time I was a lot at the office, so in the start, since there was such a huge learning curve, I don't think there was anything that could have replaced that face-to-face interaction and having people actually like in person where you can go and ask the dumbest questions in the world and they're just explaining it all to you. I think that was really valuable and something I really appreciate in our world because there are no dumb questions, although I did feel that some of them might have been in theory, but we don't really consider any questions to be dumb, especially now since we have actually within the last even year, we've grown 88%. So
Wow.
currently at like 34 employees. So in that sense, we have been having an insane growth spurt. And at the end of the day, if we would only be focusing on the space field niche pool of talent, it, it wouldn't get us far. So we have very, very many people from very many backgrounds. So as I mentioned, when we started, it was only space engineers working together. Now we have data analytics, we have software and IT and security, we have marketing and sales, we have all kinds of different teams with different backgrounds, different expertise, and they're all working together now to create something, I think, great.
So what you've described though is so interesting because obviously I speak to lots of scale up businesses just like yours, and won't come as a surprise, all have similar challenges to you, particularly people doing roles just like yours, where they've got to put in infrastructure, exactly as you described, recruitment, onboarding, employee retention. It could take them into marketing and BD, like you've talked about. What are the things that you've learned going from where you were there to getting to 34 people? That feels like it's quite straightforward, but it's absolutely not. That's really, really tough. And many tech companies or leaders in tech companies that I speak with would find that really, really challenging. So I guess there's two parts to the question. One is like, how on earth did you do it? And the other part is that I'm interested in what you said about you realized that you had to take people that maybe weren't from weren't from space. I don't mean they're aliens. I mean people that weren't from your sector. Yeah, because interestingly, again, lots of businesses I speak to, they might be in quite a niche area, and they'll say to me, "We absolutely need people who, we can only hire people who are from this area," and they're quite narrow-minded. Where it feels like you guys have been the complete opposite.
Yeah, we've definitely noticed throughout recruiting that if someone has, let's say we create the job ad, we create what kind of descriptions we need, what kind of expertise, what kind of background and experience we need. If someone checks every single one of these points, but is not curious, is not interested in learning, is not interested in taking more responsibility, is not interested in this kind of stuff, they won't succeed in the role. So we've noticed it's much more important to focus on finding these kind of curious minds who are open to both being innovated by us, but also providing innovation to us. So in the start, whenever anyone starts, we have a very, well, now we have a very broad onboarding system where we make sure that not only do we tell the new employee basically about everything we do, what the different functions do. We have a lot of one-on-one sessions with different people. And this has actually gotten some praise from new employees that it's strange that everyone wants to actually get exactly you to understand and takes time out of their day to explain to you what they do. But also we believe that it's important to learn from new eyes, new kinds of backgrounds, experiences, and everything on what they see we could improve. So this is especially in HR front very, very valuable, because it can be that they bring something that none of us with our already Kuva space glasses can see anymore. Yeah.
So that sounds really good. And these conversations, are they happening? Are you guys all present in an office, or is this team of 34 people, are they spread across the globe?
They're spread across quite a bit. So we have one employee in Japan, two in Belgium, and 2 or 3 soon in Spain. And a lot are in the office, but we also have a very hybrid way of working here. So of course, depending on the role, if you're physically building the satellite, in that case, hybrid work or working remotely is a bit more tricky.
Yeah.
That aspect, you have to actually be in the clean room to do it. But then in many roles like sales, marketing and such, it's not as present to be or good to be in the office necessarily. So we have a very hybrid way of working, and we've engraved this into many of our processes and policies and all of these.
So it sounds like you've got a very strong culture, and you've got, already you've got what you talked about at the top of the conversation about having the connection to the purpose and obviously the good of the planet. And then you talked about their job description and actually people having the right behaviors. So it's almost the job description is important, but people have got to bring this curiosity and the right personality to the business. So how important would you say the culture element is? And again, this is a headache that lots of people have when they're managing people in other territories or onboarding people in other territories. How do you cascade that culture down so it's as strong as the people that are in Finland and that are with you physically to the person that's out in Japan? How do you keep that consistent?
Overall, I think culture. I mean, it was a very long question.
Sorry, it was. I keep asking these long questions, don't I? So.
Yeah, it's okay. Culture is very, very important, and we've noticed that even though, like, now you mentioned scale up, often we do still consider ourselves a startup at the end of the day, and we consider that this startup mentality thrives around innovation. So a lot of what we do is around innovation, but also we have this very flat organization. Of course, there are always going to be layers of hierarchy and such, but very, very flat, so that anyone who works abroad, let's say in Japan, can easily contact our CEO about any question they might have. They can add any comments. We have very open dialogue. One of our values is honesty, integrity, transparency, and such. So we find it very valuable to not only have trust in our employees, but make sure they have trust in all of us. So just mutual trust from every direction, I think, is key in that. Just feeling like exactly that there's no stupid questions. You can go ask anyone anything, no matter where they are or if they're working remotely. Despite this, of course, we do notice that there is nothing more valuable than face-to-face contact occasionally. Yeah. Like it is very critical to, let's say, if there is something that is being worked on and new challenges need this final crack, it's important to bring the team together. So we do that also whenever possible. We have some of the teams meet up in different locations or in Finland. We also do have like 2 team days a year, Christmas party, and for example, the launch party, even the remote workers were online all evening following what was going on, right, and like with us through video. So I think that's really valuable.
So how would you, just give me an example like this year, you've got your Christmas party coming up. How do you engage everybody on that? Are you flying everybody over? Because that seems quite like logistically quite difficult.
It is challenging. I think team days are the main ones where we really focus on bringing everyone together. We usually have workshops also, like company culture or just basically some HR focused workshops with the whole company present in person. I've noticed that these are very valuable times to actually get the insights from everyone as they can talk to each other in person. And also, of course, speaking to people on other topics than work is very, very good, which happens a lot in these team days.
Yeah, so that's I think they're really good ideas, and they're really important, aren't they? Because otherwise people just feel maybe disconnected and they're not aligned with the purpose and all that stuff. You talked about values, so you're saying there about honesty and transparency and I understand values within a team are really, really important. How do you find effective ways to like test for those? When you're like interviewing people, because most people say, oh yeah, it's really important that everyone's here is honest, and somebody being interviewed and go, oh yeah, it's great, I like being honest as well. And it is quite, I find it hard to measure when I'm interviewing people to work with us. That is one of the hardest bits of trying to really figure out, are they actually aligned? So how have you gone about doing that?
I think it's really important to make sure that you're not guiding an interview in the direction of where you want it to go. So instead of first elaborating on what are your values and then asking them, instead first ask them, what are your values and what do you expect from us as your future team? What do you want our culture to be like? If it matches what we already have, that's good. If it's something completely different or it's something kind of contradicting to what we have, then we know that it will most likely not be a fit for us or them. So for example, we are very, very forthcoming and frank in interviews on what it is working in a startup. Mm-hmm. If you're looking for that kind of safety, security situation, don't go to a startup. Do not do it. whenever you're reliant on external funding, it's not the most secure place to work. If you're looking for that security as number one thing, go to a more established big corporation, because there you'll find it. However, if you're looking for ways in which you can improve yourself, you can innovate, you can actually get your hands dirty doing everything, then the startup is your place to be.
Have you found that you talked about, hiring people with diverse skills and diverse thinking, but have you found that experience working in a startup is really important? So, for instance, I've spoke to people before and they've said they hired somebody with fantastic experience, but for 20 years they'd worked in tier one market leading global technology businesses, thought they wanted life in a startup, and very quickly realized it was not right for them.
Yeah, definitely this is the case. I think there are two types of people. There are people who thrive in a startup environment, thrive with there's a bit of organized chaos always, and there are people who thrive with that. Like personally, I love it. I love being able to actually do about everything. I have always this feeling that I have so much to do, less time than things to do, but I can actually prioritize stuff in my mind and see what is the biggest thing to work on. If someone then again gets very anxious with taking initiative and not having just manager giving you little tasks to work on, then startups are not great for you. It will most likely cause a bunch of anxiety. It will cause this kind of stressful situation. So we do want, for those reasons, to be very transparent in the interview phase of what working in a startup is. But then that's also a part of onboarding. So we do have onboarding checks to kind of see if the expectations the new recruit had are matching the reality of what it is. And if we notice that there is a clear disconnect, in that case, we notice that it's not a match and there was some miscommunication in the interview.
Right. Okay. What have the people that integrate really quickly into your team and they onboard really effectively? What are some of the things maybe that they do, I don't know, in the first month or the first few months of working there that helps them bed in? Is there anything that you've seen that you've thought, oh, that was a really good idea?
Actually, yeah. So we do have like the first weeks are of course very hectic onboarding weeks. So in those, it's a lot of new information coming in, but also we noticed that it's really useful to kind of expand this onboarding period. So currently we have every single week there's one session of like information session for new employees. So they're on different topics. One's on satellite technology, one's on hyperspectral imaging, one's on software and IT, one's on HR. Basically going one-on-one with the person who's usually responsible or leading that area and having a one-on-one with them where they explain what we're doing. So this is actually something that has gotten a lot of positive feedback from people who have joined, just because it isn't everything bursted on the first week, but it's a long period, and also having the one-on-one interaction with the person on lead, it kind of builds that kind of initial trust and understanding of who you go to with different questions, different topics, and who might know best on those.
And I guess it also breeds, like when we talked about your culture, it breeds some real positivity and connections there, because that individual will, and like you said, the feedback's been really positive. When somebody new starts, when they're 6 or 12 months into their job, they'll remember how important that was for them and how helpful it was. And then naturally they welcome new people in that similar way, and everybody's very open and very approachable. And I think that's really, really clever. That's a really good idea.
Yeah. We have also noticed, like, overall in the office, whenever a new employee comes in, it's been really great. And I've been really proud of everyone who works here for always taking time out of their day to actually go greet and tell a little about themselves and tell a little bit about what they do and ask questions and such, so that it really brings new employees into the group as a part of the team as fast as possible. rather than feeling a bit lost and lonely in the start, which I think has happened in some of my previous jobs.
It's so funny. It's such a big thing, and I
Mm.
totally agree. And we even as a team have, it's not even a rule. It's just like what we are and what we're about. If somebody comes here for an interview and they're sat in reception, just say hello to them, even if you walk past and you don't, if there's somebody and you didn't even know somebody's coming in for an interview, you've got no idea who they are, a smile and a hello, because it's such a basic, simple thing, but it goes such a long way. And we've had people that have like, I don't mean they've joined the company just because somebody said hello, but it's made them think that, right, this environment is going to be a positive one and a friendly one and one I want to be part, and people are going to want to support and collaborate with me, not just leave me on my own.
Yeah, yeah. I also see there's a lot of value in kind of making sure that your team is diverse as possible.
Hmm.
So as I mentioned, I was the first female identifying person in the team, but now we have like 30% about there. We're still aiming for the 50%, as I've found out that that's the biggest kind of welfare indicator in a
Yeah.
company. So,
Yeah.
but we do work in deep tech, so we have to also be realistic that in this industry, there's not yet many females in it. And we're really hoping that we can be a part of the kind of motivation and promotion for females to join more deep tech companies and apply and all of this.
Well,
But
that
also,
that
yeah.
sorry, go on. I've cut you off there.
But also we do have like very, very many different cultures and backgrounds. As I mentioned, we have many people working abroad, but we also have recruited people who have joined our company and moved to Finland. So
Oh
overall,
wow.
yeah, overall we have about 40% of our employees are foreigners, like considering Finland.
So how have you? Again, it's such a basic question. How have you done that? Because like how have you integrated all these different cultures, I guess, and all these different nationalities into your team so effectively? Because that's almost like that's the blueprint that everybody wants, and for all the positive reasons that you've discussed about diverse thinking and things, and for as long as I've worked in tech, which is a long time, the gender gap has been a huge challenge.
Yeah.
There's so few women in technology, and that dial hasn't really moved forward. Most tech companies are, say your average figure, you're probably looking at like 10%. So you've
Mm.
got to 30 quite quickly, and you've got diverse cultural backgrounds and things like that. So how's that actually? How have you actually got that to work? I guess is the question.
That's a really good question because I think it's really important to also be mindful of never being at the point where you're hiring someone just because of their background or
Yeah.
like nationality, just because of what's in their pants or how they identify or anything like that. It's more of, I think, goes back to the curiosity.
Hmm.
So whenever we're recruiting, we're having so much focus and emphasis on who seems like a curious soul, who would actually benefit the most and seem like they're ready to learn, ready to develop, and all of this. It just has happened that there have been many, many females, luckily, in our application candidate pools, which have seemed like a great match for the roles that we've had. And also same with the different cultures and backgrounds. So I think with that, it's more been around Finland is not a huge space country. We do have, I think, one program on kind of space studies, which these original engineers came from. But overall, it's not a huge talent pool. If we would stick to Finland talent pool of space, we would just it wouldn't happen. Nothing good would follow. But since we do have the like opportunity to hire from abroad and bring people in, it has expanded our pool of who we can take into our company and what kind of backgrounds we get, what kind of cultures we get. I think it's been very natural in the way
Hmm.
we've done it, even though we've, of course, had a very, very strong focus and indication that this is where we want to go. Yeah.
And also, I think you say it's been natural, and I can really feel that from what you've spoken about just the way everybody is, the way you onboard people, the way you give people touch time with different people in the team, your values and all those things. So if you're a prospective employee and you're just looking at the profile of the business, you see that diversity, you see the gender diversity, the cultural diversity, you feel probably confident, I guess, that you know that's a good prospect for me. That's a business that's quite forward thinking in its values. It's, you know, that's a modern day
Yeah.
workforce, and it's not, you know, it's the place where I would be included. It's inclusive. So
Yeah.
that's credit to the way you've just, going back to when it was you and the 5 engineers, just putting those steps in place. That's just organically grown, it sounds like, and now giving you this great platform where you've got this really diverse workforce.
Yeah, I think inclusivity, as you mentioned, is key. So making sure that everyone actually feels like they belong. This is kind of part of also just ensuring that everyone is in line with our mission and values. That's, I think, the most important thing, because once people feel included and inclusive, that's what really opens up the floodgates of innovation.
Mm-hmm. How just taking you back to, and as soon as you said it right at the top of the conversation, I was like, oh, I'm interested to understand how you did that. You know, when you talked about you were the first female employee, and it was like a team full of engineers and probably quite technically minded people, and I'll be quite stereotypical here, but you know, those sorts of individuals are typically the people that are like, you know, they quite like having the headphones in, doing the work. They're not typically, you know, the party animal people and dead sociable extrovert type people. And I'm being hugely stereotypical there, but by nature, you know, they're quite plugged into what they're doing. How did you get through those early days? Because I see that a lot in scale ups. You might get, again, we're generalizing, but often people doing a HR and people role, if you looked at the stats, I'd imagine there's more females doing that role than the males. So how do you actually get through those early days? What's maybe some advice or things that you found that might help people that are doing something similar?
I think in that case, we were maybe more lucky in that stereotypical side, because we did have this, of course, these people were very, very focused in what they're doing. But also, I would say some party animal were there. For some, we did have a lot of events, which were great ways to kind of feel included. I also have never really had much challenges in kind of getting along with men.
Right.
Weirdly, yeah. So I think it was quite easy, and it did feel very natural, but I was very, very happy to grow also the women in our team, or make sure that there are more women in our team. And I feel that does change dynamics. It does change kind of the way people talk, the way people behave, but it doesn't much. Like in our situation, it was, from the start, I felt everyone was very respectful, everyone was very kind, everyone was very inclusive. I felt very quickly part of the team, and as mentioned, I was asking a bunch of dumb questions. No dumb questions, but I was asking a bunch of questions constantly, and everyone was being so kind in the way they answer it. Even though now I think they probably were like, well, how does someone not know that? But they never showed it. They always just answered the questions and made me really feel like I was growing my understanding, not only in what I was doing, but everything else. Yeah. And being able to kind of do many different roles in the start. So being able to take on many, I say infinite, many gloves, putting them on, or many hats, putting them on, and like learning more about the industry, learning more about marketing, learning more about HR. It was just a constant flow of learning. And I think that is the key, because I think people really appreciate and feel most satisfied in their work when they are learning, when they're developing as individuals. It's not only just doing the exact same tasks 9 to 5. It could be that for some people that works, but in my environment, I've noticed, especially in our company, that people really, really appreciate being able to learn constantly.
And that feeds right back to your point about curiosity, doesn't it? So even, yeah, and again, we're talking about the early days and some of the challenges you had there, but really it's anchored into a lot of these things that are really key for you now as you've grown. So if you've got a curious outlook and like you described, you just dived into the role and you put on as many hats, as many gloves as you could find, metaphorically, and that got you places with people. That sounds like that really helped you build relationships with people. It helped you add value, and it therefore made you fulfilled in the work you were doing, and by the sounds of it, highly effective in the work that you were doing.
Yeah, yeah, and I think also just being part of the like original or in the very, very start of the company, but also being a part of pretty much every recruitment since, every onboarding since. I feel the connection I have for the people I work with is invaluable.
Mm.
It's really something that both I and probably them benefit from, because I really do want to make their lives at work as great as possible, which is, I think, the main purpose of HR, which is why I probably ended up in this role.
I think you make such an interesting, relevant, and vital point, which is I think it's been harder for a lot of people in the last 12 months because a lot of economies and a lot of, it's been challenging for businesses. But I think going to work should be an experience for people. And you do need people within your organization that are almost ambassadors for that and don't see employees as like, right, we're on a mission and we need to get this much revenue and we need to do these three things and we don't really care about the people. You've spoken throughout this and we haven't really talked about revenue and business growth or anything like that once. It's all been about how do we get the best out of our people? How do we build diverse teams? How do we have inclusive thinking? All these different things. So it's no surprise that the upshot of that is the business is going in the right direction and it's hitting its objectives.
Yeah, there have been a lot of studies on overall how basically correlating ENPS, so Employee Net Promoter Score,
Mm-hmm.
and profit actually are. So they do often go in the same direction, which in our case, last time we checked, it was 78.
That's brilliant.
Yeah, it's great. We're looking to make it even better, or as we grow, at least keep it on the same level. We'll see how it goes, but yeah, I think it's really, really important to have a focus on the people, because at the end of the day, your team is the key to your success as a company. I've heard many times that no matter what kind of vision you have, mission you have, as a startup, if your team isn't working well together, it most likely won't work at the end of the day. So with that, we've been really blessed.
Yeah. I mean that it's like I've said, it's comes across massively that you put a lot of energy into that, but not just like from oh, this is a good thing to have. This is coming from like heart. This is out of passion. This is out of like, real love of doing it. And it's been really beneficial for the business, clearly, to help you grow. One interesting thing, and I get this feedback quite a lot as startups become a scale up, they get the Series A, they get the Series B. And you talked about, you yourself, I guess, being there from the start. People will say, oh, the culture's changed, or the business is different, or this isn't it's not the same, and inevitably it's not going to be. So is that something that, I don't mean it worries you, but like, how are you going to navigate maintaining this amazing culture you've got as you go through that exciting growth journey?
Yeah, definitely. That really is actually a big thing. Like trying to, I guess I noticed when I started, there weren't many processes in place. With a small team, especially with many people from the similar background and very simple stuff happening in a sense, there is not much need for processes. But as we grow, the need for processes just keeps on growing with that. However, too many processes can also be a huge innovation killer. So the key has been trying to find a balance with creating new processes, new ways of working, new policies without killing innovation. It is a challenge. I can admit that. And there have been many different aspects of it where I've been considering on how exactly we can improve different aspects and different operational challenges. But yeah, many of them happen through actually listening to our employees, listening to what people are talking about in the office or out of the office, and basically building off that and trying to find solutions to anything that comes up. So having an agile way of working is really important.
And I think you've said it already, haven't you? Like just what you said there, listening to employees, employee engagement, the way that you onboard people, the fact that you're so passionate about what you do and you recognize people come first. And you even recognize when we talk about like, are you worried about the changing culture? It's like, yeah, like I've already thought about this. So that in itself, I think maybe a lot of other fast growing businesses sort of deal with some of these things as they go along, and then it becomes too much of a big problem, whereas you're looking a bit more forward thinking.
Yeah, definitely. There is a long roadmap with HR developments, and really things have to be timed out correctly. So of course, bandwidth is one thing. Like I can't do everything at once. It's a fact, and everyone's busy in their own ways in a startup environment. So finding the right things to focus on is key, really, at that point, because at the end of the day, you can do something, fail miserably, throw it in the garbage, or to wait for later and start something new, which hopefully will help.
Yeah.
It's a lot of failing, trying, piloting different options and solutions. But I think that is really what I enjoy doing. I really like the fact that you can kind of test things out. There's no like consequences of failure, at least at this point yet, because there is enough success to kind of balance that out and make sure that things are not falling into absolute chaos.
You can be quite creative, can't you? You can think of new ideas and road test it, and if it's no good, like you say, no one needs to know it was an idea.
Yeah, I've noticed now like work is very exactly creativity focused, a lot of brain juices, brain power being used. So yeah, I find it even more actually valuable now to balance that out with some physical exercise and outside of work, just to make sure that then my body is balanced with my mind.
Yeah, and that, that's really important, isn't it? I mean, many people talk about like working in business and working particularly in a startup environment. You've got to be match sharp, you've got to be physically fit, you've got to eat the right stuff, go to bed. Everybody loves partying, but you can't do that too much, otherwise you're not going to be very good at work.
Definitely. Yeah, and we do promote that also to employees. We have very, very many kind of employee benefits are being worked on constantly, but we do have a huge focus on improving people's like both physical and mental health. So we do find it really valuable to actually offer psychotherapy to anyone who might need it, and also any kinds of sports advantages and such. So we're hoping in our new office we'll be able to have our own gym, which we can.
Cool.
Yeah, and it'll be great because at the end of the day, you really need to balance things out. And we do have a group of employees who goes always climbing on the wall.
Oh, cool. Oh, that's good.
Yeah, after work, we gather together and go climbing. So
what's been the what's the best benefit, or what's the benefit? So what I'm asking you this for is that often you think that people say, oh, you get there's a really good pension and that's a great, it's a monetary thing. But often when I ask that question, it might be a benefit that there might not be a monetary value. It might just be like a flexible working benefit or something like that. What do the team like? What's the best one?
I would say definitely flexibility is one of them. So overall, just having the hybrid way of working is one thing people really appreciate. Also, we have very flexible hours. So whether you start at 7 or start at 9 or end at 3 or end at 5, it's fine for us as long as you do the 8 hours or 40 hours a week, or 37 and a half. Yeah, it's really important to just give also that trust to employees and give that opportunity for employees to balance their work life and personal life. And also, I think one valuable thing is exactly these kind of team meetups. So all of these team days, we also have every other Thursday we have a team breakfast. So everyone gathers in the office and eats breakfast together. Having these kind of face-to-face moments and going climbing with coworkers or having a game night, I think those are really, really, really important.
And it's funny you mentioned breakfast. We did that here internally. We'd be like, let's go for a lunch or we'll go for drinks after work, or that, very typical team building thing. And then recently we did an incentive, and it was, if we achieve this incentive, we'll go for a breakfast, and we did it, and it was great. I thought, why have I not done this sooner? Because nobody had had a drink. Everybody came back to work, was really refreshed, and we had a really, it was like win, 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 win. There was like loads of good reasons to do it.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And of course, one is like overall healthcare.
Yeah.
I think it's really important for overall anyone or any company to really consider the benefits in offering employees a really broad healthcare opportunities. So we do have, for example, dental included. We do have the psychotherapy. We do have all vaccines. We have many, many different kinds of doctors and everything that we can offer to employees. But I think that for many, at the end of the day, also is really valuable, because Finnish healthcare, the public side, it's cheap, it's okay, but wait times are long. So,
Right.
So being able to offer people to go actually get things forward and focus on their own health, I think that's really important, and also saves, of course, on the long term, the company more money than it costs.
Yeah, and it feeds back into what you've been so clearly passionate about, is just keeping people happy. If people are healthy, they're going to be happy, and it's going to be productivity, and that really makes sense. So a couple more questions for you. What would your advice be? And you've talked about some of these themes already, but if there's somebody who has perhaps done a HR role, they've worked in technology, they've worked for 20 years, but never worked in a startup, and they're thinking about scratching that itch and going and doing that as part of their career journey, what are the perhaps one or two positive reasons why you'd do it? What are the things you'd say to those people? And you've talked about quite a lot of them already. What are the main ones that they need to really be like mindful of, that might be a surprise they might not have thought about?
I would say overall, one of the biggest pros is just being able to get your hands dirty. As I said earlier, it's really being able to get to the nitty-gritty, do a bunch of things in different areas, actually try and learn areas even outside of your own expertise and work on things which might not be in your own little niche. This can be great. This can also be surprising to some. So in some cases, there are, of course, people who do not really appreciate the fact that they get tasks outside of their own little bubble.
Yeah.
I really don't think that's possible to avoid in a startup, just because it's always someone has to get things done. Also, if you suggest improvements in some areas, sometimes you get the actual papers in hand that, okay, go ahead, start working on that, do it now. So those are quite interesting, and I think fun, but yeah, it could be like challenging to some. But at the end of the day, I think really, for me at least, and for I know many people working here, it's so valuable to actually be able to work in a startup, having that kind of mindset of everyone working so closely together as a team towards a bigger mission. And yeah, I really think it is fantastic.
Yeah, that's pretty powerful, isn't it? That's a pretty powerful thing. And the point you make about that's feedback I get consistently, which is people not understanding there might not be a department for that. So if you rock up and go, hey, where's the marketing? Exactly like what happened to you. It's like, it's you, you've got to do it. Yeah.
Ops coordination, it's me. Yeah. But then I also got to dabble in business development purely because I wanted to, purely because I was actually fascinated on that side and wanted to see if it's my thing. I realized quickly that although I like to travel, traveling that much for work was not my thing. And that's why I decided that that area is not really for me.
But that's, again, it's another positive thing. It's an opportunity, isn't it, to expose yourself to different environments, different skills, and figure out if you're good at it and figure out if you like it. So, you know,
Yeah.
another benefit.
Yeah, I think if I would have straight away gone into a more corporate environment, I would have ended up probably, in a sense, stuck with marketing for the rest of my life, just because it was what I first thought that I would want to do. But when I started doing it, especially from scratch, I realized that I really had a passion for HR. I really enjoyed the recruitment process and improving that, onboarding, improving that, and getting to know people and focus on actually trying to make people happy and enjoy every aspect of their working life as much as I can, of course, affect.
Yeah,
So
and that's a massive thing. Like you know, what comes across so clearly from you is it is coming from in here. You're just so passionate about it. It's such you know, it's such an amazing thing, and so good for the business to have somebody that's just such a champion of the people that work in the company. That's so cool. So my last question then, tell us a bit about where's the business going? What are the exciting plans? If there's people that have listened to this chat and they think this sounds really cool, what sort of people are perhaps you know what sort of skills or sort of job roles are you interested in people to perhaps reach out to you about?
yeah, so I mean, we're surely continuing our growth in pretty much the same speed as we have now. So probably going to be doubling again next year.
Wow.
Amount of people, ambitious goals, but also to get to our final goal, which is the 100 satellite constellation. It's essential to get more people on board. So this will be in everything pretty much, basically data science, satellite technology, marketing, sales, business development. What else? I mean, maybe some back office roles like recruiter most likely will soon have to be one part of our new recruitment plan, just due to the amount of workload, of course, which comes in doubling in size. But yeah, I think overall our plans now is we're working towards having our next satellite launching. If I remember correctly, it was in the start of next year, so quite soon. And also after that, it should be about 2 to 4 satellites per year. And constantly, we're working on a platform to actually make the insights understandable for everyone. So just giving people raw hyperspectral data doesn't give much. People won't be able to understand it. They'll need their own data analytics team. So we want to make sure that what we provide to customers will be directly the insights, everything that they actually need to know and understand. Yeah, I think our growth plans are huge. So of course, a lot of people will be appreciated. But we are really, really focused on quality over quantity, of course. So even though our growth plans are to double, if we find only half of that as like very, very good and efficient, curious, innovation-minded people, then we'll only take the 10. So
Yeah.
of course, quality is always key in those.
But it sounds like such an exciting time
Yeah.
to be in the business, and it's a big credit to you and the team to have got you on this journey from where you joined with that small number of people to where you're at now and these amazing plans that you've got. So I just want to thank you for spending an hour with us, telling us all about your journey and your stories because it's fascinating. And I think some of the things you brought in and put in place, maybe in theory, sound quite simple and quite, you know, it's an obvious way of doing it, but I understand from the, you know, the way you've unpacked it, there's a lot of work that's gone into it, and a lot is reliant on your values and connection to your purpose and all that stuff. So I think people listen to this will find that, you know, really, really valuable. So thank you.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you for having me.
No problem.